Love doesn't always end with a fight. Sometimes it ends at a printer, on a Tuesday afternoon, while the dishwasher hums its familiar 3-note cycle in the next room. The light coming through the kitchen window was the same pale gold it had been for 11 years of marriage, slanting across the same countertop, illuminating the same coffee rings we never quite scrubbed away. He was upstairs packing. I could hear the sound of drawers opening and closing, the particular rhythm of his movements that I knew as well as my own breathing. "Babe, can you print my boarding pass?" he'd called down. "Email should be in my inbox. Password's the same." His voice carried no tension, no hesitation, just the casual intimacy of someone who trusted me completely, or someone who had forgotten to be careful. I said yes without thinking, the way you respond to someone you've loved long enough that words become reflex. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one small truth at a time. The printer was in the corner of the dining room, beside the window where we used to eat breakfast before our schedules pulled us into different orbits. I opened his email on my phone. The inbox was exactly what I expected. Work correspondence, newsletters he never read, a reminder about his dentist appointment next month. I scrolled until I found the airline confirmation. Chicago, 3 days. A consulting project, he'd said. The kind of trip he'd taken 100 times before. I clicked the email. 2 passengers, 2 seats, 1 hotel room. The second name wasn't mine. I stood there with my thumb hovering over the screen, and somewhere in the house a clock was ticking. The dishwasher shifted into its rinse cycle. Outside, a car door slammed. My heart was doing something strange, not racing, not stopping, just forgetting its rhythm for a moment, like it had to remember how to beat. Her name was Rachel Kimura. I read it 3 times. Then I read the hotel confirmation attached to the same email thread. 1 king bed, check-in, Thursday, check-out, Sunday. There was a note in the booking. Celebrating. Just that one word, followed by a champagne emoji he never used with me anymore. I printed his boarding pass. The printer hummed and whirred, the paper emerged warm. Upstairs, the drawers stopped opening. We'd been happy once. Or maybe we'd been comfortable, and I'd mistaken comfort for happiness. It's hard to know the difference when you're living inside it. When the days fold into each other like pages in a book you've read so many times, you stop seeing the words. We met at a friend's wedding. He'd caught the garter. I'd caught the bouquet. It felt like fate, though later I'd wonder if fate was just a story we told ourselves to make coincidence feel like destiny. He worked in consulting. I worked in marketing. We both liked Thai food and true crime podcasts and sleeping with the window cracked open even in winter. When he proposed, he did it in our apartment, not some grand public display, just the 2 of us in takeout containers from the place down the street, and I'd loved him for understanding that I didn't need a performance. The wedding was simple. The marriage was supposed to be simpler. For years it was. We bought a house with a good school district for children we kept saying we'd have soon. We adopted a cat who hated him and tolerated me. We painted the bedroom 3 different shades of blue before settling on the first one again. We had inside jokes and Saturday morning routines and a favorite spot on the couch where we'd watch shows with our feet tangled together. But somewhere, I couldn't say when, the space between us started to expand. It happened so gradually I didn't notice. He traveled more for work. I stayed late at the office. We texted instead of talked. We ate dinner in shifts. The cat started sleeping between us in bed, filling the gap that had opened while we weren't paying attention. We still said, "I love you," before hanging up the phone, but the words had become ritual, not revelation. I didn't know then that this was the sound of ending. I thought it was just life. The last time we'd had sex was 6 weeks earlier, maybe 7. I'd stopped counting. It had been fine, quick and quiet and familiar, the kind of intimacy that feels more like confirmation than desire. Afterward, he'd kissed my shoulder and fallen asleep within minutes. I'd lain awake listening to him breathe, wondering when his breathing had started to annoy me, and hating myself for wondering. 3 days before he asked me to print the boarding pass, we'd had dinner together for the first time in 2 weeks. I made pasta, he poured wine, we talked about work, about the neighbor's new car, about whether we should finally replace the living room rug. Normal things, safe things. He'd smiled at me across the table, and I'd thought, we're okay. We're still us. I didn't know he'd already booked the flight. After I printed the boarding pass, I stood at the printer for a long time, long enough that the paper cooled in my hand, long enough that he called down again. Did it go through? My voice came out steady. I've thought about that a lot since. How easy it was to lie. How quickly my body knew to protect itself. Yeah, I'm bringing it up. I climbed the stairs with the paper in my hand. Each step felt like walking underwater. The hallway was the same hallway it had always been. The same pictures on the walls, the same scuff marks on the baseboards from when we'd moved furniture 7 years ago. But everything looked different now, like I was seeing it through glass. He was in the bedroom, folding shirts into his carry-on. He'd always been meticulous about packing. Everything rolled, everything organized. A skill from years of travel, he used to say. Now I wondered how many of those trips had been just trips. Thanks, babe. He took the paper without looking at me. I'm trying to decide if I need the blue sweater or if that's overkill. I stood in the doorway. He held up the sweater for my opinion. It was the one I'd given him for Christmas 2 years ago. Merino wool. Expensive. Softer than anything he owned. I'd saved for it because I wanted him to have something that felt like luxury against his skin. The blue one's nice, I heard myself say. He folded it into the suitcase. 3 days feels long, but it'll go fast. The client's demanding, but the team's good. He zipped the suitcase. I'll try to call when I can, but the schedule's packed. I nodded. My hands were in my pockets. I realized I was digging my nails into my palms. You okay? He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something flicker across his face. Concern, maybe, or recognition. For a second, I thought he knew that I knew. For a second, I thought he might confess. Fine, I said. Just tired. He crossed the room and kissed my forehead. His lips were warm. He smelled like the same cologne he'd worn since we started dating, cedar and something citrus. My body remembered loving that smell. My body hadn't caught up to what my mind now understood. Get some rest, he said. I'll be back before you know it. He left the next morning at 5. I pretended to be asleep. I listened to him shower, listened to him move through the house in the dark, gathering his things. I listened to the front door close, and the car start, and the sound of the engine fading down the street. Then I lay there in the bed we'd shared for 11 years and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. That first day I went to work, I sat in meetings, I answered emails, I smiled when someone made a joke in the break room. I was so normal that I frightened myself. At lunch, I sat in my car in the parking lot and pulled up his email again on my phone. I read the confirmation again. Rachel Kimura, One King Bed, celebrating. I Googled her name. She worked at his company. Same city, different department. Her LinkedIn photo showed a woman about my age, dark hair cut sharp at her shoulders, a smile that looked genuine. She had a degree in data analytics. She'd worked there for 2 years. In her profile picture, she wore a necklace, a simple gold pendant, a bird in flight. I closed my laptop. That night, the house felt larger. I'd never noticed how much sound one person makes until there was only me. I made dinner for one but couldn't eat it. I tried to watch television but couldn't focus. The cat sat on the back of the couch and stared at me like she knew. Around 10, my phone buzzed. A text from him. Landed safe. Hotel's decent. Miss you. I stared at those 2 words. Miss you. I typed and deleted 4 different responses before settling on. Good, get some sleep. He sent back a heart emoji. I turned off my phone. By the second day, I'd started looking for proof. Not because I doubted what I'd seen, the email was unambiguous, but because I needed to understand. How long, how often, whether I'd been blind or whether he'd simply been careful. I went through his closet. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it. Receipts in the pocket of a jacket he hadn't worn in months. Dinner at an Italian place downtown. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, 1 dessert to share. The date was 5 weeks ago, a Tuesday night when he'd texted me that he was working late. There were others. A hotel in Portland from a trip he'd called a solo work obligation. A jewelry store receipt for a bracelet I'd never received. Each piece of paper was a small violence, a tiny incision that bled memory. I thought about the nights he'd come home smelling like shower gel instead of the day. The way he'd started putting his phone face down on the table. How he'd changed his laptop password and said it was for security. The weekend he'd said he was going to visit his college friend in Denver and came back sunburned with sand in his suitcase. All of it had explanations. All of it made sense until it didn't. I found a card in his desk drawer, tucked inside a folder of old tax returns where he knew I'd never look. It had a bird on the front, The same bird from her necklace, I realized later. Inside, in handwriting that wasn't mine, "Thank you for seeing me." R. I put everything back exactly where I'd found it. He called on the third day. I was at work, sitting in my car again, eating lunch I couldn't taste. His name lit up my phone, and I considered not answering. But what would I say when he asked why? What reason could I give that wouldn't reveal everything I knew? "Hey," I kept my voice neutral. "Hey, babe, how are you?" He sounded happy, lighter than he'd sounded in months. I wondered if that's how his voice always was when he was with her, if I'd forgotten the sound of him being happy. "Fine. Busy. You?" "Yeah, same. This client is—" He launched into a story about a meeting, about someone's unreasonable demands, about hotel coffee that tasted like cardboard. He was good at these calls, good at filling silence with words that meant nothing. I let him talk. I said uh-huh and wow in the right places. "Listen," he said, his tone shifting. "I might need to extend the trip by a day. They want one more round of revisions." "Okay." The word came out sharp. A pause. "You sure you're all right?" "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." "I'm at work. I should go." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay. Love you." I couldn't say it back. I tried. My mouth opened, but nothing came out, so I just said, "Bye," and hung up. I sat there in the car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and finally let myself cry. He came home on Sunday, one day later than originally planned. I heard the car in the driveway. I was in the kitchen, wiping down counters that were already clean. I'd been cleaning for 2 hours, moving through the house like I could scrub away what I knew. The door opened. "I'm back!" His voice echoed through the house, the way it always did. I heard him drop his suitcase in the hallway, kick off his shoes. Normal sounds, the sounds of coming home. He appeared in the kitchen doorway. His hair was damp, recently showered. He'd shaved. He looked rested. "Hey," he smiled. "God, I missed this place." I set down the dish towel. "How was it?" "Exhausting, but good. I think the client's happy." He moved to the fridge, pulled out a beer, twisted off the cap. "How were things here?" "Quiet." He took a drink. "I got you something." He disappeared into the hallway, returned with a small bag. "Saw it at the airport and thought of you." Inside was a candle, vanilla lavender, from a shop at O'Hare, a generic gift, the kind of thing you grab in 15 seconds while your flight boards. "Thanks," I said. He was looking at me strangely now. "You sure you're okay? You've been weird since I left." This was it. This was the moment I could ask. I could hold up the email printout I'd hidden in the drawer. I could say her name. I could demand the truth. Instead, I said, "I'm tired." "Okay." He set down his beer. "Want to order dinner?" "Thai?" "Sure." We ordered Thai food. We ate at the table without talking much. He told me about Chicago, about the architecture, about how cold it was by the lake. I nodded. I made the right sounds. We were performing a play we'd rehearsed for years. After dinner, he went upstairs to unpack. I stayed in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with careful precision. When I heard the shower start, I went to his suitcase. I didn't plan to. My body just moved, like it knew what it needed before my mind could stop it. His clothes smelled like hotel detergent and her perfume, something floral I didn't recognize. In the front pocket, I found a cocktail napkin with a phone number written in pen, then crossed out. In the side pocket, a matchbook from a restaurant I'd never heard of. And underneath a pair of folded jeans, a receipt from the hotel gift shop. One item, a silver picture frame. I put everything back, but I kept the receipt. We lasted another 3 weeks before I finally said something. It wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no throwing of objects, no slammed doors. It happened on a Wednesday night in the kitchen while we were cleaning up after dinner. He was loading the dishwasher. I was wiping down the stove. The same routine we'd performed 1,000 times. "Who's Rachel?" My voice was quiet, almost casual. But the dish he was holding stopped halfway to the rack. The pause was maybe 2 seconds, maybe less, but in that pause, I watched 11 years end. "What?" He didn't look at me. "Rachel Kimura." I kept wiping the stove. "The woman you took to Chicago." He set the dish down carefully. His hands were steady. That's what I remember most, how steady his hands were. It's not what you think. Then what is it? He turned off the water. The kitchen went quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. He leaned against the counter, looked at me, finally. How did you find out? Does it matter? I guess not. He rubbed his face. How long have you known? Since you asked me to print your boarding pass. Something changed in his expression. That was almost a month ago. Yes. You didn't say anything. No. He exhaled. Wing! I'd ask myself that question every day. Why didn't I confront him immediately? Why did I let him kiss me goodbye, let him text me from the hotel, let him come home and pretend? Maybe because confrontation would make it real. Maybe because as long as I didn't say it out loud, there was still a chance I'd imagined it. Maybe because I was afraid of what came after. I wanted to see if you'd tell me. My voice stayed calm. I wanted to see if you'd lie. I didn't lie. You just didn't tell the truth. That's different? He closed his eyes. It started 6 months ago, after the Portland conference. She was on the same project. We got dinner a few times, just work stuff. Then it became... He trailed off. I don't know when it changed. 6 months. Half a year of dinners and hotels and text messages while I slept beside him. Half a year of him touching her and coming home to touch me. I thought about the night 7 weeks ago when we'd had sex, and I felt sick. Do you love her? The question surprised us both. I don't know, he said, and that hurt worse than yes would have. Do you love me? Of course I do. Then how? I don't know. He was crying now, silent tears down his face. I don't know how it happened. I don't know when we stopped being enough. I just kept feeling like something was missing, and she made it feel less missing, and I didn't know how to stop. We stood there in our kitchen with the dishes half done and the light fading outside and everything we'd built crumbling into the space between us. What do you want? I asked. I don't know. That's not fair. I know. I loved you. Past tense. I heard it the moment I said it. So did he. I'm sorry. His voice broke on the word. I'm so sorry. Sorry meant nothing. Sorry was just a sound you made when you destroyed something and wanted to be forgiven before you'd earned it. I set down the dish towel. I need you to leave. What? Not forever, just tonight. I need to be alone in this house. I need to remember what it feels like without you. He opened his mouth, closed it, nodded. I watched him grab his keys and his wallet, watched him walk to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. I'll fix this, he said. I promise I'll fix this. But we both knew some things. Once broken, don't go back together the same way. He stayed at a hotel that night. Then another. Then a week passed, and we were living in separation without calling it that. He came by to get clothes. We texted about bills and mail and whose turn it was to call the plumber about the leaking faucet. We were polite. We were careful. We were strangers performing the choreography of a marriage that no longer existed. I started sleeping in the guest room, not because our bed felt wrong, because it felt the same. The sheets still smelled like his shampoo. The pillow still had the impression of his head. I couldn't stand the familiarity of it, the way my body still reached for him in sleep. I told 3 people, my sister, my best friend from college, my mother. Each conversation was the same. They asked if I was okay. I said yes. They asked what I needed. I said I didn't know. They offered comfort I couldn't accept, advice I couldn't follow. Everyone wanted me to be angry, but I couldn't find the anger underneath the grief. My sister said I should file for divorce immediately. My friend said I should demand therapy. My mother said nothing and held my hand. What I wanted was impossible. I wanted it to have never happened. I wanted to go back to the moment before I clicked that email and choose not to look. I wanted to live in the ignorance that had felt like peace. 7 weeks after the confrontation, we met for coffee. His suggestion, a cafe downtown we'd never been to, neutral territory. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He'd ordered for me. Oat milk latte, extra shot. He still knew. Thanks for coming, he said. I sat down. The coffee was hot in my hands. I've been going to therapy, he said. Twice a week, trying to understand why I did it. Have you figured it out? Not really, but I'm trying. He looked tired, thinner. There were shadows under his eyes. I ended things with her the day after I moved out. I told her it was a mistake, that I should never have let it start. I waited for that information to make me feel something. It didn't. I want to come home, he said. I want to fix us, if you'll let me. I don't know if there's an us to fix. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. You loved her enough to risk everything. You loved her enough to lie to me for 6 months. You loved her enough to take her to Chicago and buy her gifts and plan a future while I was home thinking everything was fine. I never planned a future with her. Then what was it? He was quiet for a long time. Escape. The word hung between us. From what? I asked. From being the person who disappoints you. From being the husband who works too much and doesn't make you laugh anymore and can't figure out how to be enough. From being 43 years old and wondering if this is all there is. He looked at me. I know that doesn't make it okay. I know it doesn't excuse anything, but it's the truth. I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake beside him, feeling the same distance, the same disappointment, the same quiet wondering. I thought about how we'd both been drowning in the same marriage, just in different rooms. I was lonely too, I said. I know, but I didn't cheat. I know. So what does that make me? The faithful fool, the good wife who waited while you figured out if the grass was greener? It makes you someone who deserved better. His voice cracked. It makes you someone I failed. We sat there in that cafe for 2 hours. We talked about everything and nothing. We dissected the marriage like coroners examining a body, trying to pinpoint the moment life left it. Was it the first year when he traveled too much? The 3rd year when we stopped having sex as often? The 7th when we stopped trying? Neither of us could say. By the time we left, nothing was resolved. He asked if he could come home. I said not yet. He asked if I wanted a divorce. I said I didn't know. He asked if I still loved him. I said the same thing he'd said about her. I don't know. Time did what time does. It moved forward whether we were ready or not. He stayed in the hotel. I stayed in the house. We went to couples therapy, sitting in a beige office with a woman who asked careful questions and gave us homework about communication and trust. We tried, we failed, we tried again. Some weeks we made progress, some weeks we unraveled. The work was exhausting. By Christmas, he'd moved back in, but into the guest room. We were roommates learning to share space again, testing the boundaries of what we could rebuild. He was careful around me, I was careful around him. Every conversation was a negotiation, every gesture measured. The cat stayed on my side of the house. We didn't touch, not for months. Then one night in February, snowed in during a storm, we ended up watching a movie together on the couch. Somewhere during the 2nd act, his hand found mine. We sat like that for an hour, fingers intertwined, both afraid to move, both afraid to let go. It wasn't forgiveness, it was just touch. But it was something. By spring, we'd started having sex again. Awkward at first, then familiar, then something new, careful and sad and desperately tender. Afterward, we'd lie in the dark and talk in ways we hadn't in years. He told me about the guilt that woke him at 3 a.m. I told him about the nightmares where I relived finding the email. We shared our ruins with each other, brick by brick. But even as we tried to rebuild, the foundation stayed cracked. There were good days, days when I'd catch him looking at me the way he used to, days when we'd laugh at something stupid and it would feel like before, days when I'd think, maybe we'll survive this. And then there were bad days, days when I'd see him reach for his phone and my chest would tighten. Days when he'd say he was working late and I'd spend the evening checking his location. Days when I'd look at him across the dinner table and see a stranger wearing my husband's face. The hardest days were the ones when I caught myself wondering if I was fighting to save the marriage or just fighting to avoid admitting I couldn't. A year after I printed the boarding pass, we took a trip. His idea, a cabin upstate, just the two of us, no phones, no work, no distractions. an attempt to find each other again outside the house that held all our ghosts. We hiked, we cooked meals together. We sat by the fire and talked about nothing important, books we'd read, shows we wanted to watch, whether we should finally replace the kitchen tile. We were auditioning for a future we weren't sure we wanted. On the last night, lying in bed, he asked me if I'd forgiven him. I don't know, I said. I want to, but I don't know if I know how. What would it take? Time, maybe, or distance, or magic. I turned to look at him. Every time I think I'm close, I remember. And remembering feels like betrayal. Betrayal of what? Of myself. Like by forgiving you, I'm saying what you did was okay. That I'm okay with being the person who gets left behind while the man she loves celebrates someone else. He was quiet, then. You were never left behind. Even when I was with her, I never left you. But you did. You just didn't move out. The truth of it settled over us like snow. We drove home the next morning without deciding anything. The cabin had been a test and we'd failed it. Or passed it. I still don't know which. 2 years later, we're still married, still living in the same house with the same coffee-stained counters and the same broken drawer in the kitchen that neither of us has fixed. He still travels for work. I still stay late at the office. The cat is older now, slower, less interested in the space between us. We are not the couple we were. That couple died in a kitchen on a Wednesday night and never came back. We are something else now. Something harder and stranger and more honest. We know each other's capacity for damage. We know love is not enough to prevent loneliness. We know that trust, once shattered, can be glued back together, but the cracks remain visible. Sometimes I catch myself resenting him for taking away the version of our marriage I thought we had. Sometimes I catch him looking at me with guilt he'll carry forever. Sometimes we have sex and it feels like grief, but sometimes it feels like hope. I still don't know if this is what forgiveness looks like or if it's just survival disguised as healing. I don't know if we stayed because we love each other or because leaving felt like admitting defeat. I don't know if Rachel Kimura still works at his company or if she thinks about him the way I think about her, as the person who altered everything while barely appearing in the story. What I know is this: love is not the thing that saves you. Love is just the reason you try. There are mornings when I wake up next to him and feel grateful. There are mornings when I wake up next to him and feel trapped. Both are true. Both will always be true. Last week, he asked me to print a boarding pass. My hands shook when I opened his email, but there was only one ticket, one seat, no hotel confirmation, just a business trip to Boston, returning the same night. He saw me staring at the printout. Just me this time, he said quietly. Just me every time from now on. I nodded. I wanted to believe him. Maybe I did. Maybe I always will. Maybe that's what trust is after betrayal. Not certainty, but the choice to hope anyway. The house is quiet now. He's in Boston. He'll be back tonight. I've made dinner. Pasta. The same recipe from that last ordinary night before everything changed. The cat is asleep on the couch. The sun is setting through the kitchen window, painting the counters gold. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, standing at a printer, watching her entire life reorganize itself in the space of a single email. I want to tell her it gets better. I want to tell her it gets easier. But those would be lies. What I'd tell her is this: you will survive the unsurvivable. You will hold more contradictions than you thought possible. You will love him and hate him and forgive him and never quite forgive him, all in the same breath. You will learn that people are not simple, that betrayal is not black and white, that marriage is less about perfection and more about what you're willing to carry. You will learn that love, real love, isn't the thing that happens when someone completes you. It's what remains when they've broken you and you choose, impossibly, to stay. Outside, a car turns onto our street. His headlights sweep across the wall. The front door opens. Keys drop into the bowl. I'm home. The words echo through the house that holds everything we were and everything we might still become. I take a breath. Welcome back, I say, and I mean it.